UArizona was hot. Nico Mannion's hair was hot. What was hotter? The Sun Devils, in the most prolific win of the ASU season, they took down UArizona 66-65. On the other side of things, the women's basketball team fell to UArizona 59-53. House Hardcourt joining you from the Bill Austin radio studio in Phoenix, Arizona. Zach Keenan here with me in studio. Jackson Zuber, Madden Johnstone Thomas, Marco Peralta, and Rob Werner. Guys, let's get this show going right away. I mean, Madden, we talked about that 59-53 loss for the ASU team, and what do you have to say about that? Where do you get words from that?
Well, I think the biggest thing for them going forward is execution. It's something that head coach Charlie Turner-Thorne talked about it in media availability before the game, and she said it's going to come down to executing. And ultimately, they just didn't do that. They were leading at halftime, and then Arizona came in, kind of just pulled things away, and they just weren't able to come back. Offense wasn't really there. Jatavia Tapley went 2 for 9 from the field. So I think for them, getting that offense back, their 5-game winning streak just snapped, and UArizona sweep them for the first time in 20 years. So.
And now what's next for this team? Where do they go from here?
Well, I think they had a really good thing going in that 5-game winning streak. You know, they beat Oregon, they beat Oregon State, they go up to Washington, beat the Washington schools, and now they face USC and UCLA. And they had a close game with UCLA before, so I think if they can beat UCLA, it'll be really big for them.
Well, that's interesting. And in that same vein, I open the floor to everyone here. What do we think about this women's basketball team? They had huge wins on this season, but now are they slowed down by the loss to UArizona? And for that, we have to bring in Marco. Marco, I got to ask you, what does this team need to keep doing or to do in order to for a stronger Pac-12 title or go for that Pac-12 title, really?
Well, honestly, they have to bounce back from being swept by Arizona. It was the first time in 20 years it's happened. So they need to bounce back from that loss, and they have to take a grasp of the momentum of beating bigger ranked teams. They have to take back that momentum of actually coming together as a unit, as one, and have the mentality of like, we can do this. We're a team that can achieve bigger and better things. They also don't have to take lower ranked teams lightly or not serious. Every single game is crucial for them going forward. They are just 2 games behind the number 1 spot, but the schedule going ahead is really, really tough. They are facing 3 top 10 teams, UCLA at home, Oregon State, and Oregon on the road. So this is a really tough schedule going forward. So they really need to take that momentum, like I said, of beating those bigger ranked teams and face them with like everything they got, so they can make a really, really good push towards the end of the season.
And there is something to be said, and I can bring Madden into this one as well. Is there something to be said about the team being able to beat these top-ranked teams and then not being able to beat teams that aren't so good?
I mean, I think something that Charlie has talked about multiple times during media availability is she feels like this team is really coming together. Obviously, she has some veterans on her team, people that are experienced, and she does have a young roster, but I think they're all starting to get it as well. And I think that beating those bigger teams shows that they definitely have something to prove.
Mm-hmm. And we'll shift over to a different basketball team on campus, the men's basketball team, hot off of a win against UArizona. I think the most electric moment of the weekend was Tay Cherry's last-second block that stuffed the game, iced it. That was a great moment for Sun Devil fans everywhere. And Marco, we bring things over to you to ask what was different about ASU basketball this weekend. They had a great win against Utah. I'll give them that. But games against Colorado weren't great. And then all of a sudden, they kind of showed up against UArizona, did they not?
Well, a lot of people were like underestimating ASU because U of A or UArizona, whatever they want to call them, the school doesn't have a name at this point of the year. But anyways, like they really took a grasp of like playing for a purpose and having an underdog mentality, because everyone's like expecting like, oh, UArizona's going to be slaughtering the floor against ASU the whole entire game. But no, like they really came together as a team and had that underdog mentality and like, hey, this is UArizona and we have the Territorial Cup. We can't lose it to them. And it doesn't matter if they have that ranked number right next to their name, and if they even have it in, like I said before, but we're not going to let that number affect us keeping the Territorial Cup. So that's what was different. They took on the underdog mentality and just say like, hey, even though you're ranked, this is still our state, you know?
Mm-hmm. And beating a team whom, with you're competing for the Pac-12 title, that's a pretty big thing. What's next for the Sun Devils?
Well, honestly, they have to take advantage of like these non-ranked teams, because that's the only way they maybe have an invitation for March, because because teams of the rest of the Pac-12, they are only there's only a few that are ranked, so they have to take advantage of like a couple slip-ups for the teams that are not ranked. So that could be a little push going into March and going into the rest of the season, because they're only like a couple games away from the top spot, like just like the women's basketball team. Like it says right here, there are 2 games behind number 1 spot, and the only ranked teams are Oregon Ducks and the Colorado Buffalo. So if the rest of the Pac-12 slips up and ASU capitalizes on those mistakes from the rest of the team, they could potentially move up that ranking and get a Pac-12 championship title, and maybe, hopefully, get an invitation in March, because they are ranked very, very low in the polls. So if they make a good run the rest of the season, they might get an invitation.
What does the rest of our house crew think about that?
Well, I mean, I saw the game a little bit differently in the fact that, I mean, Arizona was absolutely spanking ASU in the first half. I mean, yes, ASU pulled off a comeback win, but there were some very questionable things that happened in that game. Sean Miller going away from one of his freshmen that had really been stroking it behind the arc. I forgot the young man's name, but I think there was a lot going on. Arizona seemed to be in a bad position when Nico Mannion got in foul trouble in the second half. That really was tough. He had, I think, 12 points in the first half, 4 threes in the first half, excuse me. I think that Arizona State, in a lot of ways, can be fortunate that they got that win. And like Marco said, it's a very good win. They needed it desperately, though. This ASU team is now 3-3, tied for Pac-12, or for 5th in the Pac-12. And you probably need 10, 11 wins if you want to compete for a spot in the NCAA tournament.
Easily.
They got 6 remaining at home. They've played some tough Pac-12 teams already. Arizona, Oregon, Colorado so far. They won't see those teams again, but it's not going to get any easier for this team as well. Washington State this weekend. That's an opportunity for this ASU team to try to put together some wins. But also, Bobby Hurley's teams have never had a road sweep in his tenure as an ASU head coach. So I'm curious to see where the team really goes from here. It seemed like a lot of that game was maybe being a rivalry atmosphere, feeding off the crowd, feeding off of what Bobby Hurley was yelling and preaching to his team. But I don't really know if that's the most indicative performance of the quality of this team.
Mm-hmm. And Jackson, what do you think? Where does this team go from here? Or what did you see out of that game?
I mean, in that game, Rob, I have to agree with you on that. I mean, they were behind, obviously, but I see it almost as a positive that they were able to come back in that, because the way these games normally go when the crowd's pumping them up and all this is that they come out and they just have control of the game the whole time. I think it's a good sign for the team that they were able to ride that momentum and kind of build it themselves, and then the crowd took over. I think that's a good sign for them going the rest of the way. Do I think that means that this is going to completely change the team? Probably not. I mean, I feel like we've seen enough basketball. We kind of know what this team is. But I think it's a good sign going forward that maybe there is some room for improvement, that they were able to, start out very far behind,
Right.
start working their way up. Then the crowd really came into it, and then they were able to just completely, I think, take over that game, even though it was close towards the end. But it almost felt like ASU's game to win towards the end of that one.
Do you guys remember which game it was last season when Bobby Hurley went on in his presser and blamed the fans?
Was
that Washington State?
I believe it was Washington State. Yeah, it was Washington State. ASU had just beaten Washington, who was undefeated up until that point in conference play. They lost to Washington State. I remember I think it was Robert Franks had like 35 points. I think Washington State killed ASU. I don't think Washington State had a win yet in Pac-12 play. So you come off this amazing win, then you have nobody play well for you on the entire team. You lose to Washington State, and then it was the Utah game. I remember this vividly because I went to the press conference and I asked a question to Bobby Hurley about the offensive efficiency, and I said, last time you guys played Utah, this was going to be ASU's next opponent. You guys weren't great offensively. What can you do to change it? And he flipped my question into, when fans come out and we get a really great atmosphere rocking, the ball swings around, our guys feel it, and the crowd gets all pumped up and we score. I was like, well, that is no part of what I asked you, sir.
You were the reason behind that legendary Bobby.
Oh, it wasn't just me. Every single question he turned into, we'd really like our fans to show up. And we have really great fans, and we need them to show up.
Well, and how much does having fans, or more fans, or less fans, and loud fans, quiet fans, how does that affect change in Bobby Hurley's games?
I don't really know. I think he really loves the atmosphere. I think he feeds off it, especially. I mean, Bobby Hurley's obviously a very emotional guy. I think he feeds off that. I think he tries to get his players to feed off that, and it's just something that I think this ASU team needs a little bit right now, especially when it doesn't have. I don't think they have the most talent on this roster. They shoot a ton of threes very inefficiently, so there's like issues on this team. And that's why I said, I think in the Arizona game, they masked a lot of them by playing with momentum, by running the floor, by being the team with more energy, with Bobby Hurley just yelling at the guys and trying to get every little bit he could out of them. I don't think that like this team is nearly as talented as some of the teams that we've seen in the past. You know, the team last year with Lugens Dort, with Zylan Cheatham, the teams with Trey Holder and Shannon Evans. I think this team is a lot scrappier than some of those teams. And I think that's good in some ways, but I think it needs more emotional momentum kind of leaps.
Mm-hmm. And the team is sitting pretty, I guess, at 12-7 right now, 3-3 in the conference, a little past the midway point in the season, 6 weeks to go until the Pac-12 tournament. Rob, what's Bobby Hurley doing?
Well, this is really interesting, and I wanted to talk about this because before the Arizona win, people were very, very critical of Bobby Hurley. Even with ASU having a decent weekend up in Oregon, losing to Oregon and then beating Oregon State in a game I don't know if many people expected ASU to win. But I've been seeing a lot of people on message boards, on social media, saying Bobby Hurley isn't a good coach, and if ASU wants to really move forward, ASU is going to need a change at the head coach spot. And I think straight up that that's ridiculous. And I'm not going to argue here that Bobby Hurley, I think, is the best in-game coach, that he's doing everything right, that he makes every correct decision. I've been critical of him before. I sometimes think he gives the players too much control. But I think it's important to look at context with Bobby Hurley. This program is on the verge of potentially going to 3 consecutive NCAA tournament appearances. It hasn't done that since the early 1960s. There is no precedent at ASU as being a good basketball school. They've never had that.
Just the expectation.
You know, there's great fans that expect that, but outside of that, there's no expectation at all.
There's
no precedent.
They got basketball, maybe?
There's no precedent of winning. Bobby Hurley, he's won 2 national championships as a player. He's a fantastic recruiter. He gets great athletes to come to ASU to play basketball. He's on the verge of signing another 5-star in Josh Christopher. He's
got a 5-star now. Marcus Bagley is officially a 5-star recruit now.
Marcus Bagley coming to ASU games and being very excited, and the crowd, the 942 crew chanting, "We want Bagley." Bobby Hurley does a lot of very good things for the program. I don't think it makes any sense to act like ASU is in a position that is higher than Bobby Hurley.
Wow.
I think if anything, Bobby Hurley in a few years could decide he'd rather be somewhere else. He's a very good recruiter. He's proven that he can be successful. He did a great job coming from Buffalo. I think that he's a guy, we saw him a couple years ago with St. John's get pretty close to leaving ASU for St. John's. Mm-hmm. I think it doesn't make a lot of sense to act like ASU is in a better position if it moves on from Bobby Hurley. Could you get a better in-game coach? Probably. I think that's possible. Could you get a better recruiter who's been in the NBA, who's got 2 national championships, who's done a lot for the program recently? I don't think so. So I think that fans understandably can be critical of Bobby Hurley and what he's doing sometimes, but I think they also need to understand that he's the reason that ASU basketball has been moving upward and the reason that ASU basketball is in this position where it thinks that it should be considered a dominant program in the Pac-12.
And this question's for everyone. Is there a more prolific coach in the NCAA as far as just energy goes? Sean Miller may be sweatier.
I think Bobby's brother Dan would want to contend for that. But I think it's a good point. This guy's emotional. He's fiery. His players talk about that and talk about how they love seeing him do whatever it takes. He'll get a technical. He'll yell at a ref. He'll look stupid. Yeah.
I feel like he's perfect for a program like ASU who needs to play with that energy. You know, they need a guy that's getting after them and all that, getting all red and all that he does. Mm-hmm. And I think, Rob, you're right. He's perfect for the program right now. Whether it's perfect in the future, because I feel like they're a perfect relationship together. But I feel like, if anything, you're right. He might need to move on at some point for himself.
Yeah, I think, the thing about Bobby Hurley, I love the guy. He's just so charismatic. Even before I came to ASU, when I saw the games, he was just so energetic. I was like, wow, it made me think ASU has a really great program. So now that I'm here and I'm analyzing actually the program, he's a really good at making a foundation for the future. So like you said, he's a great recruiter, and that's what he's doing specifically right now. He's signing a lot of a couple of 5-star recruits, so he's good at putting a foundation for the future, because it's only his I forgot, second or third season.
This is fourth.
It's fourth. Okay, so I was 2 off, man. But like so far in his time, he's been doing a lot of work. Like he put a couple plays in the NBA. So like he's good at not just putting the players on a good foundation in college, but also for the future. So he's really good at managing players, getting the best potential out of them in a very competitive Pac-12 conference to make them better players and also better men going into their future.
And I think that's really important. If you look at what ASU football is doing so well right now in terms of getting good recruits, in terms of just showing out nationally, like it's improving as a program, it's getting NFL guys, NFL coaches into the program and showing, if you want to get there, we can help you. We can do this. Bobby Hurley has been at the NBA. He was a very highly touted rookie in the league. He had a lot of promise before a terrible car accident really derailed his career. He's a guy that's very respected in basketball. He's played, obviously, for Coach K at Duke. He's respected all over. And I think that he's the kind of guy, if he can get maybe a couple more former NBA guys, maybe as assistants, it's just the kind of guy that he has that professionalism. He has that experience. Doesn't matter if he acts like a lunatic on the court. People actually like that. I just think that you're seeing the fact that he's getting guys to the NBA. I think that's a very big deal for a program that's kind of been a bubble team over its duration.
Mm-hmm. Anyone else have any more to say about that? Because I think Jackson, you have a pretty interesting thing coming up right here. Because Rob spoke about Bobby Hurley and how he says, and I think it's true, that the team just thrives on fans. What was your take on that? Because you were there.
Well, yeah, I was there. I was outside of the stadium, and the fans know that. They know that the team needs them sometimes, and I feel like almost when there's a big game like this, that draws them out even more. And I went out there. The line was as long as I've ever seen. It was, some Disneyland type stuff. Nothing I would want to wait in. And so basically I went there and I asked them, how can you possibly wait in this line? And I got some pretty good answers from it. Jackson Zuber for House of Sparky here outside of Desert Financial Arena as ASU prepares to take on UArizona in a big rivalry game. These fans here have been out there for hours waiting in line. I'm personally not the biggest line guy, so I didn't understand how they could possibly stay here so long. So I went ahead and asked them a couple questions about it. We got Penguins out here. They're excited for the game. Are you guys maybe trying to be a part of the curtain of distraction tonight? The excitement building right now.
Oh, 100%. I mean, we're just here. We're having a good time. We've been here for about 2 hours waiting out for this game. So, I mean, yeah, we're pretty excited.
Here they're going to let us in at 5:30, but it's 5:30 now. We're not getting in.
Last year game we came and we also stood out, but this time we made sure to come earlier because we were in the back of the line.
But when you look at this line, when you look down it, what does it make you think in your head?
I really didn't think it was going to be this long.
I am pumped, and I am ready to cheer my lungs out for my boys. And Remy is he's going to go off, absolutely, and Romelo's going to be our boy in the paint. You got any questions?
Well, we have a few more Penguins coming, actually. Hopefully they get here soon. But, yeah, we've just been walking around, taking pictures with people that come up to us.
Do you guys have any strategies on how to, not get impatient while you're waiting in the line?
Definitely play a lot of games, make up a lot of stuff to do. Just got to put the phone down, though. Save the battery. You got to save the battery.
Oh, that is smart.
I'm certainly going to be a factor with my yelling game, and my roast game will come through for sure.
My main thing is if we don't get on the Jumbotron, if we don't get on something, I mean, I'm not going to say I'm upset, maybe just a little disappointed.
This is my lucky ASU versus U of A jersey, and it has never done me wrong.
Probably have somebody come down here and start screaming at us in about 20 minutes.
ASU! 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 Let's go, Devils!
And what awesome material. That's what makes the house. Those super funny videos. What was it like out there?
I mean, it was super fun. I mean, the energy out there was unbelievable. I mean, I got to play, you guys saw I got to play Uno with some people. It was insane. It was so
Only
much fun.
you would be playing Uno with fans outside Desert Financial Arena.
Did you win?
I would.
I did not win.
Oh.
Did you
get a
make
draw
like
for?
a meme or something like do this or draw 25 or something?
Go to UArizona or draw 25.
Yeah, that's why I lost, because I had to draw 50 cards.
The whole new UArizona thing makes absolutely zero sense to me. I guess it's similar to what Washington State is doing with Wazoo. Wazoo is a party school. Washington State is a university, and that's what.
I want to go to Garner Minshew U.
and then on top of that, you've got, I guess, U of A is a party school, I guess they're saying, and that UArizona is a fine academic institution. But saying UArizona, there's some good jokes that come out of that one, I think.
I think like when they said UArizona is because like they were probably drunk and they didn't know what they were saying or something. Because it was a party school apparently, so I don't know.
I think if you watch bowl games from your couch, then
UArizona.
There we go. All right. So coming up next for the Sun Devils, for the men's team, they have a showdown up in Washington State. They have at Washington State on today actually, and then they have later this weekend they're at Washington. Marco, let's go back to you. What do you think we're going to see out of this weekend?
So what they need for these two games is like we haven't seen, like Robert said earlier, that we haven't seen us swept on the road ever since Bobby was here, but I believe like these three games against Washington State and Washington and UCLA at home will be a huge impact on their momentum going into the next four games, because they have USC, who is currently ranked number 3 in the Pac-12. Then you have Stanford, who is also ranked number 4 in the Pac-12, and they have Cal, who is right under ASU. Then after Cal, they have Oregon. So those 4 games is like what I said earlier. It's gonna help them potentially get higher in the rankings in the Pac-12. So these next three games, they have to play lights out and carry that momentum to those next 4 games to make it interesting for them in the Pac-12.
Thank you. And on the women's side, they've got a SoCal split coming up. Tomorrow they have SC. The day after, or later on in the weekend, I believe. It's almost February. Tomorrow's the 31st. That's crazy to think about. But Madden, they've got the SoCal split, USC and UCLA. What do they have to do there?
Well, I think they just have to get back to what they were doing on their 5-game win streak. Their offense was really producing. Jatavia Tapley really has to get back to what she was doing best. Charlie Turner-Thorne said that she was their go-to scorer, and she really wasn't that for them against Arizona. So I think that's going to be really important for them. They were only a few possessions away from beating UCLA the last time, so I think they definitely have a shot this time, and then they're going to go on the road to face the Oregon schools, who are probably looking for some revenge at this point.
Yeah, and there's a lot of revenge that they want out of that one. And overall, great show today, guys. We'll be back in our normal location for next week's show here on House Hardcourt. Before we sign off, I would be completely remiss if we did not address the death of Kobe Bryant and the passing of Kobe Bryant, a legend and icon in not only the basketball world, but also in the pop culture, in the world itself. And I'd like to take this opportunity to speak from the heart. Kobe was 41. We always think that we have more time. Someone will pass when we're older, when we're on a different stage of our lives, when it's later. We never really think that it's going to happen. And then a helicopter crash happened, and we lost one of the greatest basketball players of all time, someone who was an activist, someone who did so much for not only the sport, but for the culture of it, and who was loved by millions, if not a billion, across the world. My only thing that I implore you all listening to the show, spend time with your loved ones, with your friends, with others, because we always think we have more time to spend when really it's a finite resource. We learned that this past weekend with Kobe Bryant, and I hope all of our listeners at the house are able to reflect, spend time with their family, spend time with their friends, and enjoy what we really have here. Let's watch some good basketball this weekend. From all of us at the House Hardcourt, we'll see you next week.